So, hello and good morning, or good day, good evening, whenever you are listening to this. It's the Improvement Season podcast. It is me, Pascal, and on the other end, it is Steve Hall. And Steve was already telling me that his brain is a little bit mushy right now. And he doesn't know what to talk about. I don't know what to talk about. So, yeah, welcome to the Improvement Season podcast.
Yeah, it's a bit tough, I think, for us because we're just at such different points in our improvement season. I'm not in an improvement season. I'm as far away as you can be as in terms of bodybuilding. I am now just under when this comes out, 2 weeks, just under 2 weeks out from Boston and Worlds. So I am nowhere near improving. I guess you can say it's improving, but I'm nowhere near the off season. I'm very much comp prep. And you are improvement season, but also your focus is less on bodybuilding than it's ever been for the last decade.
Yeah, probably.
Or so. Yeah.
No,
so
absolutely.
We're quite
you're right.
removed even from the improvement season, but also one another in a sense, because I'm all in bodybuilding and that's where I'm fully focused my attention, whereas yours has again moved a little bit away from it and you're focused on, extra curricular activities and other interests and pursuits, like your golf, for example, which I had no idea that you were even doing.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And first and foremost, how time flies by, right, Steve? That 2 weeks until Boston already. It's crazy.
It's on recording this, it's just less than 3.
Yeah.
Because this will come out on the Monday. I'm it'll just be less than 2. It still feels, I think it will really feel close. I don't know, it still feels far away. I don't know why, but I think it's like you said, my brain is kind of mush because I'm at that point in prep where everything is just that diet fatigue, the prep fatigue is at its all-time highest, which makes sense. It's peaking at the time of which the preps, I'm coming towards 30 weeks of prep or whatever it is. So it's been a pretty long season.
What I always find interesting though is, so my point in life is right now that whenever there's some kind of tough or a harder challenge in front of you, I don't really shy away from it anymore. And also, it doesn't really impact me too much negatively anymore in terms of mentality. Because what I've realized is that the challenge in itself is most of the time much more rewarding and joyful than the results or getting to your destination. So whenever there's a tougher time, I never really complain about it anymore or moan about it. And often what it is that you then realize, in your case, Steve, is that time still passes by quite quickly. And especially in your situation, right? I mean, being in your skin, literally speaking, isn't easy to maintain such a low level of body fat. And yet, when the time is over, you will look back and be like, oh, all right, that wasn't that tough as I initially thought it would be.
Yeah, it's embracing the discomfort. I spoke on my story the other day and I was like, I'm not coming on here to complain or to say this is I don't know, to try and whatever it is, I'm not upset about things. It's my choice, but I'm just sharing what I'm experiencing. And it is uncomfortable. I am hungry. I am irritable. I am low on energy, but it's all to be expected. And I'm not saying I'm trying. Yeah, I don't want to come off as if I'm complaining about it, but it isn't something that it's not like I'm full of energy and I feel amazing and I'm hitting PRs in the gym type of thing. It's hey, this is the cost of doing business in a sense. Is you have to experience these parts of prep. And to be honest, in some ways they're kind of reaffirming because it's hey, if I feel that shitty, I'm in a pretty good spot considering, because I've taken care of so many things to feel as good as possible. So if I'm feeling still pretty shitty, the body fat's low, So yeah, in terms of the cold really hit me the last month where I'm constantly cold, where I'm previously, well, Charlotte would always be colder than me, but she might be sat there in normal clothing and I'm got a beanie on and wrapped up and yeah, I'm experiencing the depths of prep when these sort of things are happening. But it's exactly
and then
as
it's
you
in
said.
Boston. Oh boy.
Oh yeah, Boston's going to be pretty chilly. Although I looked at the weather, it doesn't look that different from the UK in terms of cold, but I think it's going to be a bit colder. And then New York is always cold, which is where we're going after Boston. Yeah, me and Mike for a week. So yeah, it's embrace the suck, like you said. Challenge is what brings change, and I'm not just maintaining low body fat. I'm still chipping away to bring those little bits of body fat down. So yeah,
are you on a
good
good path?
I mean, it's hard to say. I actually said this to Charlotte last night. It's challenging because you're moving so slowly at this point in prep, where you're just chipping away very slowly because you have to be, because you can't go aggressive at this point, because you can't risk the cost of the fatigue, which is going to harm your condition, the loss of muscle mass. And so it's hard to even see the changes. And so I'm at this point, I don't know if any competitors will be able to relate, or if you will, Pascal, from when you competed, but like my glutes are aching because I'm checking them so often. Like I'm like, so have I got any sharper? Like, am I seeing new lines? I'm like, I'm not seeing it so much. But you also get in your own head at this point in prep where you don't see the visual changes. And so I'm definitely getting tighter and tighter, but even in areas that I already thought were like as tight as they could be, like my quads, my chest. No, that's
striation.
It's just hairy and saggy as ever. It's not really changed there. So yeah, what can I say? I don't know. I'm on the only path that I know, and yeah, I mean, training is going fine. Leg days are freaking tough, but that's to be expected. And yeah, visually, it's a tough one because the fatigue is high, and some days I don't want to pose, and I hit it, and I'm like, the physique just doesn't look that great because there's high levels of fatigue that kind of obscure what you'll be able to see. And like I said, you're in your own head about your look. So yeah, when people ask me like, is it going well? I'm like, I think so. I think it's going how it should be. And yeah, checked in with Cliff. He's like, hey, I checked in yesterday. In fact, he was like, things look like they're moving in the right direction, but he does want to make a little nibble away at my calories again. So they have come down again this week. So, but I'm still not below 2,000 calories, for example. Yeah. So it's not like it's crazy low, but it just meant little chips away at like, I can't have a bit of banana in my Ninja Creamy, which is sad. But hey,
yeah,
it's easy.
I know that feeling though, that when you need to make the decision of cutting something out then of the food, and you don't really want to, but you have to. And it's not a big deal actually when you really think about it, but it is then the banana, and you would love to have the banana, even though that on any other day other than the diet itself, you would feel like, yeah, it's just a banana, just leave it out.
Yeah. It's
You're
so
getting
funny.
Emotionally attached to the banana, for example.
Yeah, it's exactly as you said, though. When you look at it, you're like, I don't want to do it. And in the short term, you're like, I don't want to do it. But then you're a couple of days in, you're like, easy. And you look back at it and you're like, I could have gone harder. So I don't want my and this is why I'm really grateful. And I said this to Charlotte again, where I don't know if I was coaching myself at this point, if I'd make an adjustment or if I'd just continue to be like, hey, this is tough. Let's just ride it through. Whereas he's just making it for me, and I'm just like, done then. I'm so glad that I can be accountable to someone that's just is like, nah, take it down.
I think it's also then so easy to fall back into that monkey mode of just like, I want this.
The chimp brain.
Yeah, exactly. I want this. And then rationalizing and justifying that behavior of convincing yourself that you need this. When in reality, if you were to be like a split personality, on one hand, it's the coach who's not deep in contest prep. The other hand, it is you as a contest prep athlete. You would probably make the same decision of like, nope, let's cut it out here.
Yeah, it just reconfirms to me how valuable a coach can be, because I think even in situations in like off season, people get into situations where they convince themselves of making decisions and calls that they want and their chimp brain wants, but actually is not the best decision for themselves. And so a coach, again, should be able to push and guide them to do stuff that challenges them, that they wouldn't necessarily make that call themselves. And I'm sure you do it with clients all the time where you're like, and one that comes to mind immediately is the number of clients where I'm like, hey, your fruit and veg intake is not sufficient. Let's jack that up. Come on. Like you need to, your sleep, you could do a better job with that. They just make these small, uncomfortable things for us that ultimately, again, they challenge us and they make us change for the better. So yeah, it's making me even consider coaching outside of being coached for bodybuilding. It's like, hey, maybe I need a coach for, I don't know, like it could be a like a mindset coach. I don't know. It could be a therapist that I'm considering. It could be a business coach. Obviously, like it's you have to find the right coach for you. And I think business coaching in the online space can be challenging. But yeah, it's making me just be like, is there other avenues in my life where I'm not quite challenging myself enough, where I can like push it to be better? A relationship coach, they could push you. Yeah.
100%. I think that there's always room for self-improvement. I think it's an inflated term though, inflated thing, especially ever since COVID happened. Lots of online coaches came to fruition, retreats and all that kind of shit that where then unqualified personnel is giving out recommendations. And yeah, sure, you can always throw it out and something will probably stick. But if you really need to change something, then you have to do your due diligence and go to someone who really knows what they are talking about and not just like who are the most vocal online, for example.
Yeah, it's so easy to like just bullshit your way in this online space.
Yeah.
And even with online coaches, I think so many people get a bad quality coach because they just see that person and they're in good shape and then they could make up some testimonials. AI can probably do that now for them, and that's scary. And yeah, people just you have to do your research and due diligence like properly. And 100%. Referrals, I think, are going to be actually, that's an interesting thought. I think in this AI space, referrals might become more and more important for services, so that you know you're talking to another human and you're getting that human recommendation from someone you trust. Because it's so easy to fake everything else. You said this about like Amazon reviews online, where it's like, you don't know if that's written by a bot or not, because bots are so good now that they can write something that looks so legit.
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about AI a lot in the past, right? And I'm still very much interested in the entire development. And there are, of course, lots of different theories how AI will evolve. Now, when it comes to, for example, the intelligence in AI right now, when it comes to just all of the models, those models are still based on things that stem from, for example, the 50s, right? So most of the AIs, or basically all of the AIs that are out there, are not really new innovations. It's just technology has evolved, and thus those AIs, it's just a huge pile of data set. And that data set is then being used to actually spit out certain content. So for example, when it comes to large language models, such as ChatGPT, it is basically just like stabbing on a massive amount of data. But really think about it, right? It's not really intelligence. It's just a bunch of data that is then being collected. And based on what it is that you're typing in, you're getting a certain answer, right? That is not intelligence. But anyway, I don't really want to deviate from this. It's just, yes, I think that many people, especially in when it comes to online or digital behavior, they would be falling victim or prey for those kind of schemes, especially, right? Because people are sneaky and also people are stupid, and that's a bad combination. Sneaky people will abuse stupid people all of the time, right? Or kind of clueless people. It doesn't mean that you have to be stupid in order to fall prey and victim to certain schemes.
Yeah. It makes me think back to when I was first getting into bodybuilding, and I almost fell for the six-pack shortcuts where he was talking about like the afterburn, the Epoch effect, and I almost bought his program and ebook and everything, and it was just such good marketing and sales tactics that I couldn't see through at that time. Whereas now I'd see that and I'd be like, I wouldn't even want to read past the first page, because I'd be like, this is, the marketing on this is just puts me off immediately. We've spoken about this where we haven't gone into that sort of marketing tactic of like those typical sales tactics. So like, I don't think our audience, it might work on some people, but it wouldn't serve our audience, and we don't feel comfortable going down that route. So it's funny. Do you, out of interest, Pascal, just on the AI thing, is there any AI you use on a weekly basis within?
Yes, I have now a new account on 11 Labs. 11 Labs is a text-to-speech model, which also has other functions. I've just created a pro account because I was in need and was looking for something where you had like text to speech or speech to speech translation. And so far, I haven't yet come across something that is better than 11 Labs, for example. It is based all on, and this is all kind of mumbo jumbo to you now, Steve, on a model that is called Tortoise, TTS, version 2. And the thing is, though, it's the same principle there as other large language models, for example. It's just a bunch of trained models. So you could theoretically also create it yourself at home with Tortoise TTS. You download it. It's an open source software, for example, but you need to have a lot of computational power because the GPU is doing all of the processing, and you need to have a lot of audio footage or audio files that is very clean and crisp sound. And then basically based on the language that you want to use, you need to have like a dictionary. And so just to give you a clearer example, like if I were to now read lots of ebooks, I would use different kind of words with different tonalities, different ways of pronunciations, and based on that, the model is being fed that data with my way of speaking and talking. Right? The more you feed into that, the better it can then replicate it in the future as well. But it's very tough to do on your own, and this is where then other bigger companies, such as, for example, 11 Labs, come into play. And this is something that you hardly ever can replicate. This is why also bigger companies who create their own models, whether it's something like large language models or, for example, also voice models or so, they will always do it internally and never really share it to the outside, because it has had and undergone through hours and weeks and months of training that AI model. And that is a lot of work. And this is where I then created an 11 Labs account, but it is still quite limited, unfortunately. You quickly come to the point where it doesn't really do the tasks that you're looking for. Anything that is complex, the AIs nowadays are still not made for it, unless it's being trained for that particular task. But then, once again, you need to know what it is that you are doing. You need to feed it that model. And most of the time, everything is a little bit more generic, such as the best example is ChatGPT. If it's really getting complex, it's not the best model for it. However, if you are making use of it for useless tasks, like let's say you have a contract that needs to be checked that is 200 pages long. Of course, it takes you much longer than the model itself to read through it and make sense of things. So for those kind of things, AI is freaking fantastic. For more complex tasks, for creation of things, most of the time you as a human still do the better stuff, and it will probably take years up until the point where then AI is taking over and does a much better job than a certain amount of people. And maybe we're at the crossroad where it will never really get there because of a limitation of then the data that it has been fed to, But this is something that time will tell.
Do you have a practical example of what you use it for?
What it is that I wanted to use it for is an educational course, where then the German sound and audio file is being directly translated into English. However, also with the breaks in between, because when it comes to, for example, a YouTube video, it wouldn't really be that much of a challenge to do that because it is cut at a very fast pace. There are no rebreathers or M's or something in between. But when it's more of a conversational thing and someone is presenting something with breaks in betweens, with pauses, with M's and all that kind of stuff, it becomes much, much more challenging to do that.
Interesting. Yeah. The immediate thing that comes to mind is, sometimes you get those adverts on TV and it's a foreign advert, and it's just so terrible. And I'm like, man, these are TV adverts people are spending huge money on. I would have thought they could have had something better by now, and they just haven't.
And for this, for example, very generic things, it's doing a fantastic job. If we were to take our coaching advertisement in between the Improvement Season podcast, like that short little break, I could easily feed that sound bit into an engine such as 11 Labs and turn it into a German soundtrack, and it would fit quite nicely. However, when it comes to, for example, a non-presented way, it's more like talking with breaks in between. And like that person or individual is especially speaking more slowly on German, it becomes very, very hard to then translate it to English, for example. And this is what I mean with more complex individual tasks, whereas something like an advertisement, a sound file, sound audio track, easy, right? Easy. But once again, more individualized, complex tasks, this is where AI, generally speaking, comes to its limits.
Interesting. I use ChatGPT. I like asking it. Actually, I regularly use it for like cooking. Interestingly enough, I'm just like, I have this much chicken. What's a really good way to prepare it to make it nice? Like to just make it nice and low calorie without adding calories. And it tells me exactly how to cook it and prepare it, which has been really helpful. Or like, I have this much rice. How much water do I need to make it like the best cooked? So then I don't have to worry about ratios and stuff. So that's helpful. And then the other way I use it is for the podcast. I'll have done like lots of research. I'll have just like, again, I'll have looked at Instagram posts. I've looked at YouTube videos, and I'll just have a text of just like loads of bullet points, some questions, some just like quotes from them. And I'll be like, hey, can you use this text and produce it into a structure and questions for a podcast? And then it will spit out like a structure and questions for me. And then I'll look at that and I'll pick and choose the bits that make sense, the bits that don't. And that's been really helpful actually, just as a time saver of like, man, doing the research is enough, let alone, but I don't think it'll be good at doing the research. I couldn't just say, hey, this person's coming on the podcast, what are some good questions to ask? It would suck.
That's the thing. And that's exactly what I was referring to with those tedious tasks that you simply don't want to do, but you have to do. Like, let's take a lawyer, for example. And of course, maybe a lawyer shouldn't really be the example because he really needs to do his due diligence to actually then be precise with everything. But when it comes to really checking contracts that are 200 pages long, man, that's a tedious thing to do, right? Or terms and conditions. How often are we reading terms and conditions for something that we're signing up? How lovely it would be to have like an AI button there. You click it and it gives you kind of like a summarization, 10 bullet points of the most important things in that terms and conditions that apply to you, right? Something like this, it's amazing for. But when it comes to putting it now back to fitness and nutrition related and all that kind of stuff, if you were to say like, hey, right now my left shoulder is giving me a little bit of pain when I'm doing the dumbbell bench press, and you haven't fed it over years now so that it does know your entire background and history, and you were to ask like, okay, are there any kind of alternatives that I can do? And it doesn't, once again, have your entire history of the things that you've tried, the things that didn't work in the past. It would spit out some generic recommendations that it finds online that other people have spouted whenever someone has asked that same question. So individualizing your training protocol is not the way to go. If you were to be a beginner, for example, though, and ask for a solid training protocol of like, hey, I want to grow my chest, my shoulders, my quads particularly. Can you write me a program for 5 days? It would spit out something that is relatively solid, right? But when it comes to that individualization for you, we're still far away from that to happen. And this is then where I think individualized services become ever more important. Things such as tedious things and if I don't know if it's now really considerate to say this, but unimportant tasks that are just like that's just time consuming. These are probably the jobs that will fall off the wagon first, but more so individualized things. Things where then human creativity and problem solving still needs to take place first, something that we are still far away from doing. And we can even see it in something like coding, for example. There's amazing software out now so ChatGPT 01, I think it's called, is doing a freaking fantastic job in coding. And then there are some other softwares as well where you can sign up, which is also then a very specific AI for then app creation, for example. And it builds an app fairly quickly, but also here, once again, it's a generic thing. But then the construct is there already from the get-go. And you don't need to start from scratch. You can immediately start in specializing and modifying it instead of that tedious thing of first and foremost creating the fundamental thing, which is not really anything creative, not anything special. It just is time consuming. And for those kind of things, time consuming things, it is amazing. And I think that this is something that the audience and listeners can use it for as well when it comes to training, nutrition, tasks such as your example. I think it's perfect, Steve. Your example is the perfect way of using something like this. For anything more than this, anything more complex, I think that you need to be aware of the limitations and you need to be very skeptical. Very skeptical.
I know I've asked it questions before where I know the answer and it's given me the wrong answer. And then I've questioned them on that. And then they've been like, oh no, you're right. And I'm like, but you just told me the answer was something else. I can't remember what it was. It's frustrating that I don't know. But it was just very funny that happened. So you're right. Yeah, it isn't perfect. It isn't fallible, like infallible. Sorry, it's definitely fallible. So,
and this is what I also mean in regards to we are far away from intelligence. It is a massive database that is pulling from, and based on certain prompts, it will give out a specific answer. But we are not there yet when it comes to speaking about intelligence. Far away from it, to be honest.
Yeah. It's been a couple of weeks since we spoke, obviously.
That's true.
And you've been really busy. How has that impacted your ability to train nutritionally? Like, are you still in this kind of, would it be fair to say, maintenance period?
Yeah. So for me personally, Steve, and let's take a short break and then delve into things. I think it's the perfect timing. Do you not see the progress you would like? Are you sick of writing your own programs? Or perhaps you need some accountability in order to stick with a plan? Then it's time to start working with us. We at Revive Stronger offer a truly personalized coaching service. You'll get more than just an email with some macros or random cookie cutter program. With Revive Stronger, you will be the center of our attention. You will receive your own fully individualized training protocol alongside a customized nutritional strategy. We created the coaching around your needs, wants, personal preferences, and your own unique lifestyle. Every single week, we delve into your program in order to make appropriate adjustments so that we get the most out of your time and the best possible outcome. We help both female and male athletes to seriously change their body composition by adding more muscle mass and decreasing fat tissue. Additionally, you get access to our exclusive Revive Stronger member site, where you'll be able to watch over hundreds of hours worth of educational content. No matter if you're a competitive bodybuilder or just want to look better, if you need help with your progress and taking your physique to the next level, our coaching is for you. It's time to make a change. Sign up today and let's revive stronger. So, Steve, you know me when it comes to those kind of other impact or other influencers, external factors, they never really impact me too much negatively when it comes to training, nutrition, doing the duties and tasks that I feel are mandatory in order for me to feel good, right? Getting into the rhythm, getting into the groove, and running that routine has never been an issue for me personally. whereas many other people, based on our experience, having worked with lots of people by now, are struggling with. So for me, I'm always making it work. Now, of course, the focus isn't really there as much as it is when you have the capacity for it, right? So I'm ticking off the boxes, but anything more than this is probably not feasible. So nutrition, you will eat anyway. So taking the time to still think about it, of what it is that you are going to eat, perfect, right? And in my personal opinion, and you are probably the same, Steve, it doesn't really take a long time or a lot of time throughout the day to think about then the next meal, to prepare the next meal, etc., etc. How is it for you? Not so much, right?
Yeah, no, even when I'm away from home, I still have like strategies and tools in place to be able to nail it. I was just thinking, because you've had multiple days away from home, right? So has that meant relying more on supermarkets, convenience food, meals out, maybe social? I don't know if, because you're working with someone at the moment, I don't know if he's like, let's go out for a meal, and you're like, are you doing that? Like, how's that working for you?
Great question, by the way. First and foremost, I was in Poland 3 weeks ago to finally finish my calf tattoo after, what is it now, 2 years or so?
Dude, I am so eager for a new tattoo. We're talking
I saw that you have like scheduled things in January.
Yeah, I've already got Aaron Yeager is finally going to be finished. I keep seeing my like stage photos and seeing him just line work, and I'm like, man, I want him done.
It's crazy because at some point you just arrange yourself with then it being unfinished. And once it's finished, Steve, you realize how much still was missing. So for my Tanjiro, it was only the flames and the face. And because of that, it wasn't really too significant, right? And it really didn't stand out like massively. But once it got filled out, I was just like, holy shit.
Yeah.
There was actually still a lot of missing parts here. And now it looks complete.
Yeah. It's surprising how much of a difference. Like, I remember when my line work got done for like Vegeta, and I was just like, it looks amazing. Like, let's leave it there. And then he was like, no. When the shading gets done, you'll see. And I was like, wow, the shading makes such a difference. Even like the background to that half sleeve. Like, I want to get a background done to this half sleeve. I just think it's going to tie it. Yeah, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. So I was in Poland, so that required me to travel, of course. I was staying there overnight because it just made a little bit more sense. I couldn't really predict of how long it would take to get the tattoo done. I could have easily traveled back home afterwards, but hindsight is 2020. And then I was in Vienna as well for like 6 days straight for a production there. And I was staying at an apartment though. So I booked myself an apartment. So I had a kitchen, made things much, much easier. The thing is though, Steve, and that was so fucked up. I was actually so stressed because of that. So I arrived on Saturday morning and it was already a little bit delayed. So, and the other people were waiting for me. And it turned out that on that Saturday, it was a national holiday in Vienna. So the thing is, though, on Sundays, the supermarkets are also closed. So arriving Saturday, supermarkets closed, Sunday, supermarkets closed. And I was just like, holy shit, I can't be here now 2 days straight without anything at all and just eating out of a restaurant or so. So I headed to the main station because there was a very tiny supermarket there that was open. And as you may know, and probably all of the listeners or most of the listeners, I don't know how it is in the US, but in Europe at least, main stations are always the center point of the worst people in the entire city. Like, it is the worst of the worst come together there and have a party. I don't know what it is, right? Everyone is actually there. And especially when then the smallest supermarket is still open on that particular day, when then the next day is also closed, everyone was just gathering there. And the supermarket was even split in the middle because it was so busy. And I hate crowds. You know this, Steve. I hate it when people are too close to me, you know? And you needed to first then buy your stuff like vegetables and drinks on the one side, then do the same procedure on the other side, again, main story is though, I am always then going to the supermarket most of the time. I'm buying my my stuff because, and this is also something that I always tell most of my athletes, if you are not ending up somewhere in Congo or, I don't know, in Borneo, right, middle of the jungle, you probably have access to a supermarket with a palette of things that you most of the time find in other Western civilized countries as well. Maybe not the exact same product, but fairly similar. And then you just have a range of foods that you can pick and choose from, and building the palette of things that you then can have to eat for the next couple of days. So I bought the typical things, Steve, right? Of course, not the same as it is as at home, but some vegetables, bits of fruit, bits of dairy products, bit of meat, and that's it. It's easy as that. Right? Don't make it overly complicated, more complicated than it needs to be. And then I've created a set down actually to think about, because I didn't really want to spend too much time at the supermarket, thought about, okay, what is it that I really want to have for breakfast? What is it that I want to have for lunch? What is it that I want to have for dinner? I planned in that I'm probably then also going out to have maybe some lunch break with the guys as well. And then I planned things out, and it didn't really take a lot of time. And once again, it doesn't have to be overly complicated. You can go also, if you really want to keep things very simplistic, get something like a bun and kind of chicken breast or so, and just put it on there. I mean, it couldn't be any kind of simpler than this, in my personal opinion.
Did you take any security blankets like protein powder with you or anything like that to so you had something just in case,
I always take like a Ziploc, like a small little pouch, right, filled with just a couple of kind of scoops of protein powder.
Or like samples, like they're always useful if you have those available. Yeah.
Right,
yeah.
But that was the only thing that I took with me when it comes to kind of, in quotation marks, nutrition. Because once again, I think that everything else, if you are in a Western civilized country or city, most of the time you can get stuff at the supermarket.
Yeah, you absolutely can. And the only other thing I was thinking is something, I don't know if I've mentioned it on here, but me and Charlotte have been using it more, is we have Prime and they have Amazon Fresh. And you can quite often order same day delivery, like groceries, and the price is good. Like in terms of, like, we have little supermarkets around us, it'll be cheaper than most of those, like by a few pence. So it's not more expensive, and like you can do same day delivery. So in such situations, I wonder if you could even do a Prime, like Amazon Fresh order, and it comes the next day, or even some Deliveroos and stuff. They go to supermarkets, they'll pick stuff up for you. So
especially when you then have a little bit more time to make yourself comfortable and familiar with the foods that they have available, right, Steve?
Yeah, and like you said, they just have the basics. They have like just 5% lean beef, like whatever, mushrooms, like they have all the veggies. So it's super convenient, actually. I do almost an order every week now where I'm just like, hey, it's actually cheaper just to go Amazon Prime, and then I don't have to worry about heaving a huge bag to the supermarket because I don't drive, obviously, to like pick up groceries. So it's actually so convenient just to do that.
Yeah, you know where we are living, right? And just
you've got it just there.
It's just in front of our door, basically. That there's a supermarket, a quite big supermarket. But yeah, I do absolutely understand where you're coming from, and this is also what I always said about food prep companies when you are being sponsored by them. That's the dream, because you are saving not only money with buying all of this stuff, you're saving a lot of time because you don't have to cook, you don't have to think about it. It's just everything is prepared for you and ready for you. And if you can be a sponsored athlete by one of those meal prep companies, it would be the dream. It would be the dream, Steve. That's the goal with the pro card, right?
This is funny because I was just chatting to them and I was saying how expensive it is to compete. For me, this season would have cost thousands in terms of travel, accommodation, because I've competed in the Netherlands, Switzerland, now Boston. It's costing a lot of money just through flights and accommodation, tanning, purchasing the pro card. I paid for a urine test, paying for the polygraphs. And I was like, I can understand that someone who isn't in a good financial situation could not afford this at all. And then especially like you buy photos, everything else. And I spoke to someone in the gym and they're like, this is what a sponsor, like you need to sponsor who would pay for this. I'm like, I think that's unheard of in the natural scene. Like I can't think of anyone who's sponsored to the level where their sponsor will pay for them to do these things. Whereas I think if you're like an Olympian, sure, like, I don't know, Nick Walker pulling out, I think that was a big cost probably to his sponsors or whatever. That's probably part of his deal, is that he was doing Mr. Olympia or they like pay for all those little things. But in the natural scene, sponsors, you see someone who's sponsored by a supplement company, quite often they're not even a sponsor. It's just like an affiliate. And so they maybe get a bit of product and like maybe they have a discount code for you, but that's about it. To get like good money through a sponsorship like that, I think just being a good natural athlete is not enough. You need to be like a social media influencer big time, because I mean, I can't think of any sponsors that would pay for any of my competitions, and they actually honestly wouldn't care, because they're like, they know how insignificant that probably is for them as a business. They care about how many followers do you have, how many likes do you get, how much interaction, how much money can you bring me, versus what sponsors used to be, or at least in the enhanced side where they fund these sort of things. But yeah, having a meal prep company sponsor you would be unreal.
Yeah,
that would be so helpful. In fact, some of my clients get meal prep, have meal prep companies do some of their meals. Mm-hmm. And man, for the convenience and the clear benefits in terms of flavor, like enjoyment, I would be tempted to try it for like a meal a day or something, because man, some of their meals, like I see some of my clients who are in a position where they can do all meal prep through a company, and it looks amazing, Pascal. They're like gourmet meals that you would order at a restaurant. And I'm like, wow, like depending on the cost of that, if it wasn't absurd, I could see why people would go that way, especially if you're like a busy personal trainer and you're doing well. You ain't got time to prepare meals on the gym floor.
And this is, of course, just an assumption of mine, but I think that from a cost perspective, it's not too far-fetched. And bear with me with it, simply because there are certain things that I was researching that I considered building myself, for example. Just as an example, the cat that is now always staying with us, right? It has become our cat. Let's put it this way. It is always here. Right now it's not here, but normally it's also lying here when I'm working. And for the winter time, I was then thinking about like a small shelter when he's then walking around like during nighttime. That if it's getting cold, if it's getting maybe wet, that he can always then go to his shelter. So I was thinking like, let's build this. The thing is though, it would cost me the same, if not even more, to purchase all of the equipment and material for it. And then we haven't even talked about the time that is going into that as well. And it was cheaper to buy a shelter than to build it myself. And that is something that I've noticed with a lot of things when it especially comes to construction work and all that kind of stuff, that it's cheaper to purchase something that is already done, because of the production cost is much, much lower. And I would very much assume that it may be the same with meal prep companies as well, because they are cooking in such a huge magnitude or kind of quantity that it's not as expensive for them. And the margin, the profit of margin for them is still present, even though that they can offer it to you a little bit cheaper.
100%. This is so true, because it's not just the ingredients you have to cost up. It is the time preparing it, also the skill of making it. Because some things, I don't know, they're slow cooked or something. It's like, well, then you need a slow cooker, and then you have to prepare all of that. And some things have like 10 ingredients that you just don't even have at home. Like you have to have the garlic, the onions, the herbs, the spices. Like some things you just can't prepare it the same way as something else like that can. So when I see celebrities are well known for, like, I don't think a lot of celebrities don't cook, or they have a chef at home, or they go out for every meal. I get it completely, because if you want something that's palatable and that's going to take time to cook and have all these things available, man, the convenience of just having someone else do that for you. So it's nothing I've seriously considered. Like, I haven't looked into it and investigated it. But again, like I said, some of my clients, normally in the US, actually, I don't know if it's different in the US. They're a bit further ahead with these meal prep services, maybe because it's less convenient to get foods like easily available. Like, we have little supermarkets everywhere in the UK, especially in the cities. But yeah, I have a number of clients who just, like, their meal prep company does them all. And I'm just like, and the variety they get, like all these different breakfasts and things like this. And I'm just like, wow. The only time I've experienced it is once, talking of sponsors, when I was sponsored by CMP, who I'm not anymore. They changed my contract, and it just didn't make sense for me to continue. But when I went to one of their events, and again, here I was like a unpaid salesman in some ways. No offense to the people that do it, but that's what it felt like in many ways, unfortunately. But we had our meals prepared by a meal prep company. And so I had like 3-4 meals, and I was like, I'd never eat this. It was like a combination of foods. So I was like, I'd never prepare myself this. I'd never even probably try it, but it's macro friendly and it tastes delicious. I was like, I can totally see why maybe you only do it twice a week that you might do it. But yeah, when I'm thinking, maybe it's because I'm food focused at the moment as well, which is probably contributing to it. But
perhaps, yeah. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right, because it's not that you only need to weigh the cost of the foods themselves against each other, but also it is the time that goes into it, because that time, if you are needing to purchase in the supermarket yourself, you need to then prepare the foods yourself, right? This is all time that, theoretically speaking, if you're a busy individual, that time is being taken away from then productive work that may make you money. I'm not saying that many people are in that situation. I think that many people still have time available, but it could also be that your time, you would say that your time is more valuable spending it on something else than this. And this is why you're then opting for it, even though that it's another expense, such as, for example, having a cleaner at home. Many people opt for it not because they don't have time to do it themselves, but because they would rather spend the time with maybe the kids rather than cleaning the entire apartment.
We have a cleaner. They come every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I was so against it when we initially had. Charlotte wanted to do a cleaner when we were in Clapham, which is like 10 years ago now. But yeah, I put off us getting a cleaner for a while. This was when we were both earning way, way less. And eventually, I can't remember what happened, but she convinced us to do it. Yeah. And so ever since we've had a cleaner every 2 weeks for years, wherever we've been, because Charlotte wants to sleep in on the weekend. They come while she's asleep. I want to go to the gym. And then I don't, like, cleaning isn't fun. And it's not that expensive. So I absolutely get it. Or a lot of people have dog walkers, as an example. Yeah. But I know for me, I want to get the steps in. So it's like, hey, I got to do this activity anyway. So it doesn't really save me that. But if you're busy, like if Charlotte was just looking after Ada from home, like when she's working from home even, she doesn't have time to go out for a walk, or it's not a priority for her. She doesn't care enough. So she probably have to pay for a dog walker. So yeah.
I would be curious to hear if any of the listeners is having a meal prep company or service. So not that they are the owner of the meal prep company. If so, that would be amazing to know as well. But if you are using the service of a meal prep company, and if you have done the math for it, or if it's just like no, fuck it, I'm just using it because out of convenience, and I don't really care about the financial aspect of things. The convenience trumps it all. And I think that this is probably applicable to a lot of services out there, that the convenience is why people are opting for it rather than a necessity.
Yeah. Anything that can save me time now. I can't think about it right now off the top of my head of things that I pay for to save time, but especially now I'm like in a more financially secure position. Say there was I don't know, had to wait for a train with Charlotte and it was freezing cold, it was going to be an hour, or we could get an Uber, but the Uber was going to cost significantly more. Depending on the time and how uncomfortable it was, I'm in a position where I can afford to get the Uber because the cost benefit analysis, it's there. So whereas 10 years ago we'd be waiting out in the cold for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely, that's the thing. And also for example, with me traveling to Vienna, of course, traveling by plane is much more expensive. Yeah, exactly. Which is the thing is with what is it, short term or short distance, and
no point.
It is such a joke. It's such a ripoff, right? That there's just kind of like a little bit of a curtain, and that's the difference between sitting in first class and economy.
A lot of them don't even offer it, do they?
No, it's business, right? It's business class then. Yeah.
Even any flights that I get like more short, like to Europe, they're basically all just like EasyJet or equivalent companies that are just like cheap and cheerful, because the actual flight, I was thinking about that, because you have to get hours to the airport early, and then sometimes there's like an hour to get through flipping passport control or something. The flight itself is often less than an hour.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, it took me like around, if I summarize everything, right, because I needed to, of course, have luggage with me. So I needed to be at the airport much earlier. And it took me in total to get to my destination in Vienna around 5 to 6 hours. And it would take me 7 hours by car to get to Vienna. So, of course, there's a consideration going there by car. Or if, and this brings back now the question of like a convenience and also price, I could easily travel there by bus. It would be the cheapest way of doing things, but it would drive through the night, right? And I wouldn't really want this, to be honest. Yeah, I'm 37 years old, man. I can't really sit for that long anymore.
Damn, yeah. It's actually, I was speaking to, I can't remember who it was. One of my clients was saying they often don't fly and they will drive, because quite often when they actually do the hours of how long it would take, driving is often quicker because of all the hours wasted, like hanging around in airports and stuff. So I totally
was considering that quite often for the last 2 trips to Vienna of actually driving there by car. Thing is though that I do like working during that time, sitting there doing something productive. If it wasn't that case, if it's only about time, I would probably drive as well to have, and this is just me once again, to have the feeling of being in control.
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. Because when my client told me this, I was like, oh, I love the idea of driving and not having to fly and rely on other people and all of this. But it's the same as, I way prefer getting a train to, like, I don't know, if we're going to Charlotte's, I'd way prefer to get a train than drive there, because if we're getting a train, like, we can both just switch off and relax. Whereas when you're driving, you're doing the driving, so you can't kind of spend the time doing other things, whether that be working or relaxing or whatever it might be. So yeah, it's kind of that sort of situation.
To draw back to, or pull it back to the eating thing, there was one more thing that I just wanted to mention in that regard, and that is, it will probably require you to think a little bit more about planning things when you are in a different country or in a different city. But it's not too far-fetched. I don't think that it would consume too much of your time, especially if you are commuting there. You could already think about, all right, what is it that I would like to have? Now, the thing is, getting into the supermarket, into a new supermarket in a stressed state may not be the best option, because I often am then overwhelmed, Steve. When we were in, for example, UK, we went to Tesco's together, and we needed to pick and choose something for dinner. I was always like, shit, I don't know what to get. So I always then opted for the very much most simplistic thing, which is kind of chicken breast and some kind of pre-packed salad.
Yeah.
Whether I liked it or not, right? It was just because I didn't really feel that I had the time to make up my mind and plan things through.
Yeah, it can definitely be overwhelming. Times like that, it's good to focus on, I would say as a recommendation, focus more on protein and calories. So don't worry about fat and carbs, because then that just becomes, you have to check and make sure it fits or whatever. That can be stressful. So that's one option. Or the other option is to do basically what you did. Just think about what you'd normally eat and kind of buy that. And then it's just like, I don't have to think too hard about this, because it can really become overwhelming in those sort of situations.
Maybe, and I don't know how it is with you, Steve, but maybe this is also a factor why I have a much easier time sticking to a caloric deficit when I'm traveling than anything else. Because
it's easier.
When I'm traveling, I know that I can stick with a very lean protein source and some vegetables, and I'm totally fine with that. When I'm gaining or in a maintenance phase, I need to think about it a little bit more actively to fill up those calories.
This has been happening with Mike, because he's on like 4,000 calories plus at the moment. And there was just some occasions where he literally ate a box of cereal at one point, like a whole box, because we'd been traveling and he needed the calories. And it was just like, this is all he had available. And I was like, Mike, I think you need to pre-plan your day of eating a bit more, that you can't rely, you haven't got the structure and routine you normally have. So you don't fall in that trap, you can kind of stay on top of it. But yeah, often it's when people are on good amounts of food, traveling, they're busy, they end up not ticking the boxes calorie wise, because it's hard to stay on top of it. You miss a meal and that could be 500 to 1,000 calories that suddenly you need to make up somewhere. And it's like, man, how can I easily do that? I don't know if I can now. So that makes sense. But yeah, the overwhelm thing, I'm probably going to have that when we go to New York and I'm like a bit free in a sense, because I'm going to be on way more food and needing to gain, and it will feel a bit overwhelming. So I've definitely already mapped out some things that I kind of want to have. But even it's like, for example, going and getting a bagel, because New York bagels. Have you had a New York bagel?
Yeah. There was this one particular spot that had like, what was it again? Salmon, but very red salmon. And that was amazing, with kind of some kind of, exactly.
Lux, I think.
With some kind of cream on it and
cream cheese,
rucola. And that was amazing. And I went there twice when I was there, and it wasn't around the corner. But it was amazing. I still have it on my Google Maps somewhere, because I always have kind of personalized Google Maps that I've marked. If it's not gone by now, it should still probably be marked out there.
Yeah, their bagels are just next level. Like they're unbelievable. How good they're. Even their supermarket bagels. I remember when I went to Vegas and I got some bagels, and they're just incredible. So yeah, I know there's like some places I want to go to, but I want to go in there with like a plan of, I'm going to eat this because it's going to be too overwhelming, especially in like a bit of a food focused mindset.
Yeah.
To kind of try and divvy up, do I want that? And it just is like stressful. So I know I'm definitely going to get a cream cheese bagel, or like a Lux, I think they call it, bagel, like smoked salmon or whatever it is. I'm going to do one of those a few times. And yeah, just bits and pieces like that where you can help reduce the anxiety and stress, but not stop yourself from experiencing things. Steve, I think is really great.
I have the name of it. It's Murray's Bagels.
Murray's. Oh, I haven't. That hasn't come up on my research.
Yeah, and it was very, very good, to be honest. And we are not from New York, so it could be that this is a shitty place for locals. There are much better ones out there, but the one that I had was amazing. So
yeah. It's funny. I think I don't know if there are equivalents in the UK, but in New York, I think you're hard pressed if you go out for pizza or bagels or something that they're well known for to get a bad one. Like they're almost always going to be good.
That's true.
Yeah, but there are some standout places that I want to kind of go to. Anything to finish on? What quickly, anime wise, anything you're watching at the moment? I'm watching Hunter x Hunter.
I saw that over on Instagram. Yeah, man, it's always a good choice, Steve.
It gives me such good feels. The music, I love the voiceover guy. It just
Yeah. This is also what Katie said about Hunter x Hunter, that there's also the dynamic between Killua and Gon. She loved this, and I
Best
can absolutely,
anime.
totally. And yeah, it's an amazing anime, to be honest. No,
It's setting me up for my next tattoo as well, I think.
All right.
A bit of Gon and Killua action, or maybe.
Mm-hmm. No, I didn't really have, to be honest, very much time to focus on animes or reading any kind of mangas or anything alike. The last couple of weeks, I wanted to actually then focus and spend on more important, so right now, in my personal opinion, more important things that needed my attention. And I didn't really have the mental space to then be able to switch off in quotation marks and then by the end of the day watch an anime or anything like. I couldn't. So this is why, I'm not really up to date for this. But on that regard, we had, but he's coming on, or it's going live, Ryan Doris on the podcast, who I always appreciate. And it's so funny, whenever we have him on and he's talking about stuff, I can always resonate with it. And it seems like that we are often in the same spot and position when it comes to our status quo in life. And what he has gone through and talked about when it comes to bodybuilding, I've never fallen out of love with it, right? But he talked about that it wasn't really his main focus for a long time. He still trained, he still ate normally and all that kind of stuff. And this is where I see myself right now. I'm still doing those things, but I'm not really thinking a lot about it because other things are more important to me right now, which doesn't mean that you have to neglect it. And I think that this is also applicable to a lot of, for example, people that we have worked with in the past and that probably are right now also listening. That's often, I would even say the vast majority of people have a time where they are very passionate about lifting, optimizing themselves, maybe bodybuilding in particularly, and then it fades into oblivion. Over time, like 2 to 5 years is most of the time the retention rate for someone. Hardly ever are people doing something longer than this when it comes to physique and physique optimization most of the time. And we know it because we've been in the industry since a very, very long time by now. And there aren't really that many people around that have been around back then. And those who are, we still see, right? And those who aren't, there are so many people who just dropped off and you haven't seen any longer. And the same applies, though, also then to clients of ours. They had a time where they were very passionate about it, and then they just maybe burned out, or they, I don't know, the fire was just like out for the thing itself. And I think you always want to be careful with passion, with hobbies, to not blow the candle out.
Yeah, you can go too deep sometimes, and it becomes, where like I know right now the level of focus I have on bodybuilding is excessive, and I'm looking forward to pulling back. But I'm also really enjoying just highly indulging that focus, knowing that I'm going to have an opportunity to pull back. But that's a good note to leave it on, and people can look forward to that podcast with Ryan.
The end, everything in life, right, that you are interested in. Not the only thing, there are many things that I do regret, but one of the things that I regret the most is because I'm a very curious guy most of the time, or whenever I'm interested in something that I'm very much kind of trying to consume as much information as possible on it. But that is sometimes to my own detriment, because it can very well be that then the next thing is coming up that I'm interested in, and the other thing is completely then dropping off. And there are so many things that I've started in the past that I didn't really see through. And reflecting back on it, I could have been so good in so many things if I had just stuck with it and done a little bit. Doesn't really require you to just go all in or do, I don't know, spend hours each and every single day. And that particularly applies to training and nutrition. And I think because of the positive benefits, mentally and also physically speaking, especially for when you're growing older, I think more people would benefit in not kind of blowing out that torch
Abandoning it.
right at the beginning, and just do enough to maintain the fire for as long as possible. And you will probably be much, much better off than just like going all out and afterwards not reaping the rewards anymore.
It brings me back to literally something I said today, and it's about making bodybuilding complement your lifestyle. And that can look different person to person, and it can evolve over time. So yeah, lovely point to.
And it comes and goes in waves most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool, guys. Cool. Thank you so much for listening. We've asked you for feedback on multiple things there, so definitely give us some feedback, especially on the meal prep, if you have a good service that you use or how you like it, that sort of thing. That'd be interesting. Yeah. And yeah, as always, if you're not subscribed, make sure to subscribe. Don't miss an episode. Give us a comment, give us a like, give us a review. We appreciate all that. And we'll catch you in the next one.
Cheers, guys. Muscle mass. Sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? It isn't though. It's reality and we know how to do it. And we will help you achieve this. The Minicut Movement is an 8-week fat loss program to make you lose a huge chunk of fat while maintaining muscle mass at the same time. We will support you from the beginning to the end so that you see the results you would like to and come out of it much stronger. You'll receive a fully automated spreadsheet that is based on your nutritional needs. You can choose between 6 different male and female training templates. Over 30 videos will guide you through each and every single step of the Minicut so that you're getting the most out of your journey and that you always know what to do. But the best thing is that you can start whenever you want. The Minicut Movement is open 24/7. So if you want to learn more or you're ready to sign up, hit the link in the description below. So let's revive stronger together.